and I am here with Jonathan. Jonathan is a client, and he has volunteered to do a coaching session and have it videotaped. What you should know is we haven't planned what we're going to talk about or how we want the conversation to go. The purpose of demonstrating this is to give you a sense of what being coached might look like or sound like. The truth is there are numerous coaching models, and depending on what Jonathan says he wants coaching on, I'll choose that model. So let's see what happens. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Okay, so Jonathan, what would you like coaching on today?
So today I had an interesting situation where I had some installers who didn't follow the right protocols, and kind of, I believe what they were trying to do was good for the company overall. They were putting forth the work and, trying to make sure they stayed longer than they were supposed to try to get the job done. But unfortunately, that interfered actually with the directive, which was they were only supposed to spend so many hours on that. And as my company has grown, you know that I'm no longer really in charge of the operational day-to-day actions with the help of you.
Yeah.
And so I was a bit frustrated with this because we actually have a company team building event today. And so now they worked until I think 6 o'clock in the morning as opposed to midnight. And we had given them morning off so that we would have this team building event. And now this morning they were requesting that time off. And so you can understand, I'm a bit frustrated because we put together this team building event. And I really kind of struggled a little bit with separating my frustration and not getting involved with the operational thing. Because, as a business owner, you're kind of like, why isn't this happening? Why isn't this happening? But I also have to understand that, hey, this isn't my area that I'm supposed to be focused with. And so I'd like to talk a little bit about that and if my approach on how I handled that was right, or how I can improve, because there's always room for improvement somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
So,
well, I'm actually really impressed that you had the mindfulness to know I need to butt out. That's progress.
I think so, because, as you know, with the last several years, I would have just jumped right in and said, no, we need to do this and you need to show up.
Right.
So things were a little different. And again, like I said, I can't really fault the installers because I believe their intention was to get the job done, which
right.
You don't want to criticize an installer or an employee for trying to do what they believe is right.
Right.
And I know one of the things we've talked about before is when is it time to coach? When is it time to listen? And knowing that moment and that sort of thing. So I thought that would be a really good session for today.
All right. So what do you think you want from this conversation?
I think my focus really is just I think it's all internal. It's being okay with everything. How will I know that I'm okay with it? And I think that's where I'm looking for. I think recognizing where that moment was and where I needed to step back, I feel pretty good about.
Yes.
But internally, I still kind of fight with that a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I'm expecting perfection from my team. The team is expecting perfection from everywhere, right? To make sure that we get through the day-to-day problems that we run into. So it's really just all about the egocentric, but it's really all about me. You feel better with all
Okay,
this.
So you want to feel better. And you want to feel exactly?
I want to feel as if I go into a situation like this again, and I'm like, push it back, put it back onto the appropriate department that it's supposed to be on, and then it just kind of leaves my mindset, and I'm moving on knowing that it's taken care of. There's a difference and I think where I'm stuck right now is I'm there, but I'm not at the point of just I can walk away from that conversation and immediately I feel resolved, I suppose, I think is the word I'm looking for.
You know what's interesting is you got the behavior right, but there's still what's happening, the internal conflict that used to cause you to step in is still there.
Right.
I have that right?
You are exactly right.
And you want to feel resolved around it and be able to just let it go.
Exactly.
All right. So from this conversation, how will you know you got what you needed for that?
See, these questions always get me every time because it's not an easy answer.
No, it isn't. No, it's okay. Take your time.
Yeah. So I think for me, it's almost as if once I'm there, I won't even recognize that it is an issue, I suppose, because I will just have already have put it aside.
Okay.
And so, and that I've been reading a lot about philosophy lately, and especially the Stoicism, and there's this whole thing about focusing on things you can control and expecting more from yourself and less from others, and being more forgiving of others. And I think that's kind of, I'm playing a lot of that into this internal dialogue that's going on right now.
All right. All right. And when you feel resolved, how do you know?
I think for me, it's just kind of walking away. I mean, just this feeling of, okay. And like it's just like kind of like if you're driving a car, this is probably a terrible analogy, but if you're driving a car and you hit an insect on the road, you don't think too, you're like, oh, well, poor guy.
Okay.
But if you hit like a rabbit or something, you probably feel pretty bad.
Yeah.
A dog, of course, So I guess it'd be like taking that scenario and like thinking of it in terms of like, oh, I recognize that this happened, spending 5, 4, 10, even 20 seconds on it, and then moving on to my tasks and going about my
it's
day.
Insignificant in the larger scheme.
That's where I was going.
Yeah.
Next, yes.
So the thing I keep going back to is, we know what you want when you're in that moment. What do you need here to get that?
Yeah, that is a question that even this morning as I was finishing my shower and was like kind of contemplating this, I'm like, all right, what is it that I need out of this? And I think part of what I got later on in the morning was I had sent a message to my operations manager and was like, she was trying to be respectful for me of saying, how would you like us to handle that? And I kind of said, well, actually, I'm a little salty about this, and I don't think I'm going to be the one that's going to give a fair decision. So I'm going to rest this upon the operations manager department to make the decision on how to move forward. And I 110% trust you all to make the right decision. I just don't think I should be making this decision. And then once I sent that, I felt 1,000 times better.
Okay.
And perhaps maybe that's part of my process that as I'm developing, that I would like to not have to send something like that.
Right. But there's something about whose is this?
Right.
And that helped you feel more resolved.
Yes.
Okay. So this lingering leftover inner stuff, you've changed the behavior. What do you think that's about?
I think part of it is I want this kind of, as a business owner, you're always kind of thinking of, you're always worried, you can get into this worry trap where you worry about somebody falling off of a ladder, or somebody stealing a van, or getting into a car accident, or causing a car accident, and things like that. And as I think for all business owners, if we don't have some of that worry, if we just kind of walk around and just be like, blah, 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 nothing's a big deal, that's going to be obviously a problem for a business owner. But how can you still have that level of caution, but still not letting it affect your day to day?
Yeah.
And
it feels like there's a distinction, though, between being careful
yes.
and worry.
Yes. Right. And how can I work through like coaching the team to feel the same way?
Yeah.
Right. Like we don't want to necessarily worry about, you don't want to create a culture of worry, because then for us, when somebody goes to a job site, then they look at all the things that aren't right, and then they're focused on those, as opposed to, we want to have that same, I want to implement what I have and kind of get the team to kind of represent an extension of me, represent everything about that, where they're careful but not worrying it.
Right.
As well.
Okay, so for you, what's the difference when you're just being careful, and that's important in your job, or when you're worrying? What's the difference?
Well, when I'm careful, I think I'm observant and looking around and paying attention to what's going on. But when I'm worrying, it's literally the opposite of that.
Is it?
You're not really, for me, like I'm not paying attention to what's on the outside. I'm actually thinking about all the things that can go wrong. And ultimately what it does is, by worrying, I'm no longer careful.
Okay, Jonathan, I'm going to wave my magic wand.
All
right? We're fast forwarding to another event. And you have that moment where you step away knowing it's not yours to interfere with, and it's easy. You don't even think it's insignificant. You spend even seconds hanging on to that, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So if you have to, close your eyes, because I really want you to
Okay.
picture just having it be no big deal. And tell me, now that you're in this place, what is it that you had to learn?
I think what I have to learn in this situation is, how does this event going to affect, does this event, perhaps would be the right way to phrase it, does this event actually affect me at all?
Yeah.
Sure, it might be an inconvenience, but does it really affect me?
Uh-huh.
And I think maybe that's the lesson that I need to be thinking about with the situation of, hey, things didn't go as planned, but does it really affect the bigger picture? And speaking with you many, many times about always being focused on the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the whole point of meeting with you, is focusing myself onto that bigger picture.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that plays
Yeah.
part of that role.
Okay, so in this moment, you're focused on the bigger picture. You're really clear about where, how this impacts you, or whether or not it does.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. And what is it that in this future where you've learned that, what did you have to let go of to learn it?
I'm kind of reminded of that book, Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, I suppose.
Yeah.
If I want to have a business that I'm not involved with the day-to-day operational procedures, do I need to be even informed that this was even an issue? Should it have ever made it to me in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
That sort of thing.
Okay.
And so maybe that could be a help in the right direction.
Okay.
So maybe it's kind of thinking about, what am I enabling the team to think that they should notify me of something like this? Was it really necessary? It's like, I don't go to my installers to tell them my financial situation because the customer doesn't pay.
Yeah.
So should I play the reverse role here?
Right.
And focusing on that organizational chart that we've created, and like, how does that position into there?
So you're letting go of having to be informed about little things in the day-to-day.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And who can you talk to about that?
Well, that obviously all the people that are involved with that process. So, going to my operations department and saying, I say department, but it's really only a couple of people.
It'll be a department someday.
One day
Yeah.
soon, it will be a department. But yeah, going to that operational point and be like, okay, maybe starting a dialogue, talking about, what areas do I get involved that are interfering with your responsibilities? When do you feel it is responsible for me to get involved, and whatnot? So, and maybe that just opening up that discussion, maybe they'll tell me there are other areas that I'm even enabling this situation that I'm not even thinking about, because maybe I let them go very quickly, but this particular issue was a problem. And so maybe that'll help me as well.
Okay. So you're going to go start a dialogue.
Yes.
Find out where you're butting in, and find out, and it feels like there might be an opportunity to make some decision agreements.
Yes.
Like what they have decision rights for, what you have, like when to escalate to you.
Right. So we have a lot of those things I'm thinking now already. Like, as one of the managing partners of the company, they don't come to me and say, you need to call these customers because they're not paying on time or something like that. However, there is a point where I do get involved with that phone call, because we have people whose responsibilities are for that. So kind of thinking that as well, as kind of like, this is the next step. It's like, okay, we've gotten this portion of the operations out of the way. Maybe there's another portion of the operations that I'm still hanging on to, because I used to be all of those things.
Right.
I had all those roles.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm feeling like there's one more thing you need. You need something. So you have some good strategies, but it feels like you need something in the moment that you step away. When you find out about something, you're not supposed to be involved. What question could you ask yourself that would support you in seeing the bigger picture?
Yeah, I think just really stopping for just a split second and just asking myself, does this affect me? Does this really affect me? Is it going to change it? Me getting involved, is it going to change the outcome of what happens?
Okay.
Maybe that's the question, or a version of that question that I need to be asking myself.
Yeah.
And kind of just be conscious of it. Like, somebody fell off the ladder and injured themselves.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's move forward with that. What's okay? I appreciate you informing me.
Yes.
Do your thing.
Yes.
And maybe like, all right, how does this impact me with
Right.
my role of the company?
Can we turn it around just so it's not a yes or no answer? Because I know you've learned this, that when you ask yourself a yes or no, it's not as empowering as when you ask yourself an open question.
Yes, that's a good.
So let's flip that. Make it like a what or a how question.
I feel like this is a simple way, but I'm probably overcomplicating this.
You're doing great.
I think the question is, how is this affecting my responsibilities today?
Okay. That could work, right? Because it just opens up perspective. Okay, so you have some action items, some strategy. How are you feeling right now?
I'm feeling pretty good. I kind of wish we had this conversation this morning.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's a wrap.